Forget the glitz and glamour usually associated with the league. Some of the wealthiest players operate like they are surviving paycheck to paycheck.
Christian Wilkins, who was a substitute teacher last spring for several Oconee County schools.
We are talking about a man sitting on a massive first-round fortune who still insists on squeezing into middle seats on budget flights. Then you have Rob Gronkowski, a legend who piled up $70 million in salary and somehow refused to blow even a single cent of it.
Gronk made a very smart decision. He's not touched a single penny of his salary.
These icons could purchase the world twice over, yet they voluntarily live with the discipline of broke college students. Christian Wilkins. Now, here is a rare breed of athlete whose daily grind bears zero resemblance to the millions sitting in his checking account. Statistically, he is a financial heavyweight, a former first-round pick, raking in multi-million-dollar deals that most people only dream about. However, catch a glimpse of his routine, and you would swear he was just another guy trying to make rent. Way before the big checks cleared, Wilkins made a pact with himself that the cash would never alter his core identity or habits. That mentality was forged in the fire, raised in Springfield, Massachusetts. He was the baby of 8 kids in a house where money was tight. Scarcity was the norm, a hard truth that drilled the value of every single buck straight into his DNA. Even when he blew up as a defensive beast at Clemson, he rejected the bling-filled fantasy that usually seduces top-tier college talent. While others splurged, he became obsessed with stacking his chips. While the locker room hit the town, Wilkins hacked the system, camping out at the facility to devour free food and keep his own electricity bill at zero. That extreme thriftiness did not take long to become the stuff of locker room legend. Guys used to crack up watching him DIY his lemonade at dinner, just free water, lemon wedges, and stolen sugar packets to avoid buying a soda. He rocked team-issued swag exclusively, refused to shop for clothes, and pedaled a bike to class while everyone else drove. In his senior year, he actually picked up shifts as a sub, grinding for $80 a day just to throw it in the savings pot. Before playing a single pro snap, the guy had already squirreled away about $15,000 purely through penny pinching. Even after getting snatched up in the first round of the 2019 draft and hitting the jackpot, he did not flip the script. Pulling in nearly $4 million annually, and later a $10 million option, did not stop him from sticking to what he calls a low-maintenance existence. You will not see a fleet of Ferraris, sprawling estates, or high-end fashion labels cluttering up his life. He is still out there catching flights on budget carriers like Frontier, picking cheap tickets over legroom every time. Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski is the ultimate shocker, a loaded superstar who voluntarily lived like a pauper. Honestly, he seemed like the last guy on earth to budget. He cultivated this massive persona as the ultimate party animal and an unstoppable force on the field, snagging passes from Brady and hoarding Super Bowl rings with both the Patriots and the Bucks. Across an 11-year run, Gronk racked up over $70 million strictly from his team contracts. But here is the kicker: despite that mountain of cash, he claims he never dipped into his actual football wages even once. He made a calculated move as a rookie to survive solely on sponsorship deals, funneling every single game check directly into the bank. That entire game plan started as a defensive maneuver. Being a second-rounder, he knew the gravy train could derail at any moment. Injuries and roster cuts are brutal realities for tight ends. In the beginning, he literally crashed with a buddy to split rent. He drove beater cars and refused to level up his standard of living just because his account balance spiked. He bought his first ride and covered rent with a $50,000 signing bonus from his agent, leaving his salary untouched. Even when the millions started pouring in, he did not budge. He admits to rocking the same denim and kicks until they fall apart rather than buying designer labels. While peers were collecting estates and exotic rides, Gronk was obsessed with low overhead, but not because he liked suffering. It was all about autonomy. He needed to know that if the game ended tomorrow, he was financially bulletproof forever. Kirk Cousins. Now, Kirk Cousins is the poster child for a filthy rich athlete who operates nothing like a celebrity. If you look at the ledger, the man is one of the highest-earning quarterbacks to ever throw a ball. He has hauled in hundreds of millions, including that fully guaranteed $84 million bag from Minnesota and a monster $180 million deal with Atlanta. Despite the fortune, he moves more like a budget-conscious dad from the suburbs than a gridiron god. Those penny-pinching ways have been attached to him since he first walked into the league. As a fourth-round pick back in 2012, he knew better than to bank on a long career. So while other quarterbacks were leasing luxury rides, Cousins was rolling around in a beat-up GMC Savannah van he bought off his grandma for $5,000. That old van was the perfect mascot for his entire fiscal vibe: utility over ego, function over flash, and zero desire to show off. Where he crashed really got people talking, though spending multiple summers bunking down in his folks' Michigan basement with his wife. When they weren't there, they were often crashing below deck at her parents' place down in Georgia. It wasn't that he couldn't cut a check for a mansion, he just hated burning cash on things he didn't need yet. He was upfront about it. Why pay rent when you can live free and strategize your next big play without the overhead? His money mantra is calculated and straightforward: dodge anything that bleeds value the second you buy it. Like exotic rides, boats, or shiny gadgets, he'd rather park his wealth in things that actually grow and pay him back down the road. Only once their nest egg was rock solid did they finally pull the trigger on a lakeside lot to construct their dream digs. Jordy Nelson. Now here is a guy sitting on a mountain of gold who lives like he never left the old days behind. The stat sheet says he raked in nearly $56 million over an 11-season run in the pros, grabbed a Super Bowl ring with the pack, and cemented his legacy as one of the surest hands in the game. But strip away the jersey, and you'd mistake him for a Kansas rancher long before you'd guess he was a wealthy sports star. That blue-collar wiring was installed way before he ever caught a touchdown pass. Raised on the family homestead in Riley County, Kansas, he learned early that sweat equity was mandatory and every dollar had to be stretched. He carried that dirt road discipline right through his All-American days at K-State and into the league as a second-round pick in 2008. Even when the direct deposits started looking like lottery wins, Nelson never felt the itch to change who he was. While his peers were jet-setting or buying bling, he was heading back to the heartland to clock 12-hour shifts in the fields. You'd find him steering combines, sowing seeds, and wrangling a massive herd of cattle numbering in the thousands. Even with millions in the bank, he always claimed his true identity was a tiller of the soil, not a gridiron giant. He bypassed the mansions and sports cars to pour his capital into acreage, heavy machinery, and the rural lifestyle he actually cherished. That penny-pinching streak didn't disappear during game weeks, either. He confessed to being a total tightwad, mentioning that he'd skip dinner on the road just to hoard his daily meal allowance. While the squad hit the town for steak, Nelson holed up in his room, waited for free snacks, and banked the cash. Holding on to his earnings was just instinct, and he refused to hire a handyman just because his wallet was fat. His dad used to crack jokes that despite Jordy's massive fortune, he'd buy land cluttered with junk and dead trees. The plan was always the same: roll up his sleeves and fix the mess himself the second he got back. Writing a check for help wasn't in his DNA. Doing the heavy lifting was. Glover Quinn is another prime example of a guy whose daily grind never looked anything like his bank balance. Statistically, he pulled in tens of millions over a 10-year stretch, smashing pads for Houston and Detroit. But purely observing his lifestyle back then, you'd never suspect he was sitting on a multi-million-dollar fortune. Growing up in Summit, Mississippi, he wasn't exactly drowning in luxury. He took that mindset with him to the pros, and when he got drafted in 2009, he set a rule that would shape his entire future. He refused to blow cash as if the gravy train would never stop running. Rather than bawling out every time he signed a deal, he stuck to a rigid 30-70 split. His household ran on just 30% of the take, while the remaining 70% went straight into savings and investments, a habit that was impossible to miss. While the locker room was buying chains and mansions, Quinn was still rolling around in the same Yukon Denali he picked up his rookie year. Even after inking a 5-year deal worth $23.5 million with the Lions, he didn't even think about trading it in. Some folks called him stingy, but in his head, he was just playing the long game. Early on, he capped his monthly spending at about $6,000 peanuts compared to his paycheck and funneled the rest into his portfolio. Using his college business smarts and some pro advice, he loaded up on blue-chip stocks before branching out into private equity ventures. He attacked his portfolio with the same intensity he brought to the defensive backfield, studying the tape on every deal and planning for decades down the line rather than looking for a quick buck. And man, did that strategy deliver. When he hung up his cleats in his early 30s, word on the street was his investments were performing so well they rivaled his actual football income. Ryan Kerrigan. Ryan Kerrigan is another guy who refused to let the size of his contract dictate the size of his ego. Statistically, Kerrigan was an absolute monster, a first-round stud, the face of the Washington franchise, and a nightmare for quarterbacks in his prime. Throughout his 11-year run, he stacked up serious cash, including a monster 5-year deal worth $57.5 million back in 2015. But if you shadowed the guy off the field, you'd never in a million years guess he was one of the highest-paid sharks in the game. See, Kerrigan's head was screwed on tight way before those pro checks started clearing. Growing up in Indiana, he was raised on blue-collar values, where grinding it out meant a whole lot more than flashing bling. He carried that grit to Purdue, turned into an all-American beast, and kept that same humble energy when he hit the big leagues. From the second he got drafted in 2011, Kerrigan made a pact with himself to spend way less than he made. While rookies usually blow their signing bonuses on mansions and toys, this guy went the other direction. Even with that massive contract signed, he skipped the mega mansion to split the rent on a regular apartment with his buddy from back home. His ride was the real kicker. Kerrigan was famous for cruising around in a beat-up van he literally bought off his grandma. Later on, he just kept driving his old whips while the rest of the locker room rolled into the parking lot in Bentleys and Lambos. Kerrigan would just slide in quietly, driving something totally boring and practical. Even his dinner plate showed you how cheap he really was. Forget 5-star restaurants or private chefs. This multi-millionaire was in the kitchen whipping up his own dinner most nights. If he did ball out, it was usually just an extra scoop of guac at Chipotle. Darius Hayward-Bay. Darius Hayward-Bay stands out as one of those loaded athletes whose bank account never dictated his daily routine. The resume was elite 7th overall pick in the 2009 draft, Raiders selection, and tens of millions in career earnings. But the second he took off the pads, his life looked nothing like your average NFL superstar. Way before the paycheck hit, Hayward-Bay understood how fast cash burns, so he designed his whole life to avoid going broke. Honestly, that mindset was baked into him from childhood. He didn't grow up with a silver spoon, and that lack of a safety net taught him serious financial discipline. The real MVP of his financial game was his mom, Vivian, a certified accountant who knew the numbers inside and out. From day one in the league, she was the quarterback of his portfolio. Instead of treating his bank account like an endless buffet, Hayward-Bay put himself on a strict monthly allowance. Every single dime was tracked, and he got regular spreadsheets showing exactly where the cash flowed. While other rookies were blowing their first checks on ice and estates, Hayward-Bay pumped the brakes. He kept it low-key, dodging the hype and focusing on peace of mind rather than trying to impress strangers. The craziest example of his penny pinching was when he actually called to cancel his cable package. His logic was simple during the season. He wasn't home enough to watch it anyway. To most rich guys, that bill is pennies, but to Hayward-Bay, it was just wasted money. Even with estimated career earnings around $35 million, he stayed way under budget. He called himself a boring guy and admitted he had to tell himself no even when he could buy the store. Chad Johnson. Chad Johnson is legendary for being a filthy rich athlete who voluntarily lived like he was down to his last dollar. Stat-wise, Johnson was the prototype of a diva wide receiver. 6 Pro Bowls, dominated the 2000s, and raked in nearly $49 million over 11 seasons. With that level of clout, you'd expect the cribs, the Ferraris, and the high life. But Ocho Cinco decided to flip the script entirely. From his rookie year with the Cincinnati Bengals, Johnson just refused to play the big spender game. He didn't bother renting a condo or buying a pad. He literally moved into the Bengals stadium for his first 2 years. The facility had the works showers, food, TVs, and Xboxes, so he was set. In his head, Dropping cash on rent was just lighting money on fire. Even when he finally left the locker room, he crashed with family instead of buying a luxury estate. His cheap streak hit his wardrobe too, while peers rocked diamonds. Johnson proudly told everyone his ice was fake. He was buying cubic zirconia from mall kiosks like Claire's, swearing that nobody could spot the fake under the stadium lights. Same deal with the threads. He rocked budget brands and knockoff sneakers, never feeling the need to dress like the millionaire he was. The guy's vacation plans and dinner menu screamed penny pincher. He had the cash to charter jets, yet Johnson routinely hopped on bargain carriers like Spirit, provided he snagged that extra legroom in the exit row. Dining out meant hitting the drive-thru, specifically McDonald's, keeping a tradition alive that started back when he was just a kid. In his eyes, dropping big bucks didn't equal a better time, and by staying ultra-thrifty, he allegedly banked over 80% of his total paycheck. Marshawn Lynch. Here is a gridiron legend whose daily grind looks nothing like what you would expect from a guy with a wallet that thick. Statistically, Lynch is a loaded ex-running back, a ring holder, a perennial all-star, and easily one of the most recognizable faces to ever play the game. Across a dozen seasons in the league, Lynch raked in nearly $50 million strictly from team deals, completely ignoring his sponsorship checks. But even with a fortune like that, his inner circle has preached the exact same gospel for years. Marshawn Lynch operates like he is down to his last dime. Being raised in Oakland, California, he witnessed how quickly riches evaporate and how frequently gifted pros wind up destitute once the cheering stops. Upon making it to the big leagues, he committed to a silent but extreme rule: he would never lay a finger on his actual salary. Rather than burning through his roster bonuses, Lynch banked almost every cent from the teams and survived strictly on the cash flow from his sponsors. That specific financial play puts him in a league of his own. Most guys view sponsorship deals as the cherry on top, but Lynch completely reversed the script. Partnerships with giants like Skittles, Nike, Pepsi, and Microsoft handled his overhead, ensuring his massive league paychecks went directly into the vault. When he finally hung up his cleats, rumors swirled that he had stashed away well over $40 million purely from his playing days. Regardless of his net worth, Lynch's routine behavior was notoriously stingy. Those closest to him laughed that he hunts for bargains at restaurants, bypassing the pricey entrees to order the cheapest thing the kitchen serves. His cousin, rapper Mr. F.A.B., went on record painting Lynch as a guy who sweats the small stuff, agonizing over a price difference of just $10 or $15. You also would not catch him blowing stacks on whips or bling. For years, he was spotted cruising in humble rides, from beaters to a Toyota Prius. He once cracked a joke about driving that hybrid for a rideshare app just to kill time, but rather than spending, he was building, eventually buying a stake in the Seattle Kraken. He poured capital into various franchises and startups, securing a legacy of riches that reaches way past the gridiron. He frequently drops raw wisdom on the rookies, warning them to protect their bread. He tells them to quit flexing for folks who will vanish the second the checks bounce. Ryan Broyles. Ryan Broyles stands out as a unicorn in the league, sitting on a fortune that would dizzy the average Joe, while living a life that is shockingly down to earth. By the numbers, Broyles is a wealthy pro athlete and a stat-shattering receiver out of Oklahoma. He was also snagged in the second round by Detroit back in 2012. Throughout his run, Broyles pulled in over $3.6 million, with a solid $1.4 million locked in. Catch a glimpse of his daily routine, though, and you would never suspect a thing way before the payday hit. Broyles made a deliberate choice. The league money was there to bulletproof his tomorrow, not to upgrade his today. Raised in Norman, Oklahoma, he understood the power of strategy, and as a fresh face in the pros, a money manager dropped some wisdom that shifted his whole perspective. The blueprint was straightforward. Calculate your survival number, stick to a cap, and let the rest grow. Broyles did not just listen, he executed. Along with his wife, Mary Beth, he capped their yearly spending at roughly $60,000, covering everything from the mortgage to the milk. Every other dime, whether from the team or sponsors, was funneled into portfolios, retirement funds, and property, locking in safety for life after the game. Despite the millions rolling in, Broyles kept his existence incredibly low-key. He was pushing a 2005 Chevy Trailblazer from his campus days and whipping a Mazda 3. His wife, meanwhile, cruised around in a Cadillac SRX. When it was time to relocate, he drove the rental truck himself to dodge the mover fees. And he definitely did not ball out on fun. They cut the cord on cable, preferring streaming services, and treating themselves to a restaurant was a rare, calculated event. Even their getaways were designed by a penny pincher, utilizing discount codes and deal sites to stretch every dollar. His pad in Dallas, Texas, while cozy, mirrored that same mindset, useful, sensible, and completely void of bling. He dove headfirst into economics, tracking his portfolio every morning, studying under tycoons, and maximizing perks like the league's 401k matching scheme. That discipline was a lifesaver when injuries derailed his playing days, allowing him to pivot smoothly into property development using the nest egg he built while suited up. Now, his net worth is still climbing, letting him concentrate on his kin, his enterprises, and charity work without the shadow of debt looming over him. Drop your take in the comments below. And before you bounce, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to NFL Rivals to catch the next drop.